Hello and welcome to Lists and Other Things That No One Asked For with Jesse Barbin, your weekly mini podcast with essays and lists about music, TV, books, and in general, the painful process of growing up. Thank you for tuning in. This past week, Fargo had one of the more satisfying episodes and scenes of their season. It's when Indira catches Lars cheating and tells him to leave. And if you're not a Fargo Season 5 devotee like me, all you need to know for this is Indira is ambitious and put together, and Lars is a dud. He sucks. Indira works to support them both, and Lars doesn't work at all. And instead, he stays home and spends Indira's money, and he's landed them both in deep debt. On top of that, he's extremely critical of Indira. The whole thing is a huge bummer. That's why it was so satisfying to finally see Indira tell Lars off and ask him to leave. After a good episode, I'll go online and read some reviews and recaps, and in some of the reviews for this past episode, a few critics were skeptical that someone like Lars and Indira would ever get together in the first place, like it was a plot hole. But here's the thing, I can think of 5 Indira and Lars type couples that I know personally just right off the top of my head. Super ambitious woman, non-contributing or minimally contributing man who has a mostly terrible or non-existent personality. First, I say hats off to the Fargo writers of this episode, Noah Hawley and Thomas Bezucha. I looked it up, for capturing a very real relationship dynamic. And second, I asked these critics, do you really not know one Indira or one Lars? That's wild to me. They're out here, amongst your friends, co-workers, even your extended family. You shouldn't have to look far. Straight women are settling left and right out here. At some point, Indira did the relationship calculus and decided there was some reason to be with Lars, and that's what happens when a society socializes one gender to hate themselves and the other to think they are entitled to whatever they want. I'm no Lars, but I do acknowledge that I'm a beneficiary of straight women settling. My wife is cooler than me by a mile, and I promise that's the sincere, hard truth and not me blowing smoke like a lame coworker who calls his wife his better half, but then complains about being married all the time. Those guys suck. This is not me trying to make a statement. This is not even a totally serious episode. I'm just trying to say that Indira and Lars are totally believable characters and have real-life counterparts that you have probably met. I hope this doesn't annoy anyone, but if it does, you're probably a Lars or maybe an Indira. The only real takeaway is don't be a Lars, acknowledge that we can all be a bit Lars at times, and resolve to be a bit less Lars in the future. Here are some TV couples that I hate. Number 1, Leslie and Ben on Parks and Recreation. Ben is just a whiner, and part of it is he has to play the straight man all the time, but I just really don't like his character, and I never did. And while she was exhausting, and we'd probably never hang out in real life, Leslie was at least likable. At least Ben supports Leslie, and I respect him for that. On the flip side, I do really like Ron Swanson and Diane, the Lucy Lawless character, in the later seasons, as they both seem very comfortable together, and they have a real deep respect for one another. Number 2, Mulder and Scully from the X-Files. As much as I love the X-Files and it was a huge part of my adolescence and early 20s, I admit I am not a Mulder and Scully shipper. They were much better off as friends and good colleagues. I think what bothers me most is that Mulder is sort of a Lars and that he might have been charming at one point, but usually he's just all over the place and undisciplined, and Scully always has it together. She's constantly cleaning up after him and reining him in. Them getting together made everything worse. They're kind of like Hermione and Ron. Like it seemed like them getting together made sense at the time, but in retrospect, it sucks. Number 3, Tam and Francis from Still Game. Tam is a cheapskate, my least favorite type of person, but he ends up married to Francis, who is a sweet old lady. She probably married Tam because as an older person, I suspect your options are fairly limited. Tam doesn't take her out anywhere, lusts after her sister pretty openly, and is just, in general, a crap husband. On the other hand, when Isa and Winston were a fake couple, I loved it. Winston stuck up for Isa when her shifty ex came around, and they took care of each other up until Winston messed it up. They're pretty much the only TV couple I have ever shipped. Also, they're the only couples costume I would do. I'm not into couples costumes, but I would totally cosplay Winston and Isa if I could get my wife to do it. Here are some TV couples I stan. Number 1, Holly and Michael from The Office. This one is probably a cliche, but I love Holly and Michael. I like that they're both weird and they accept each other with all their flaws and all their annoyingness. I can't watch The Office anymore because my tolerance for cringe has gone down dramatically as I age, but I remember this TV pairing fondly. Number 2, Marcella and driving instructor John from Game Face. This couple is similar to Holly and Michael, only instead of being weird, both of them, it's mostly one person being weird, Marcella. And driving instructor John accepts all of it and is even charmed by it. Who doesn't want to be in a relationship like that? Remember when Marcella leaves a basket of groceries on the floor of the grocery store and John tells her she's deeply disturbed? And she acknowledges that she is. And he smiles, which shows he loves her in part because she is slightly disturbed. Also, why doesn't this show stream anywhere anymore? Game Face is in my top 5 sitcoms, and I wish it would stream. Anyway, that's a side note. Number 3, Bob and Linda Belcher from Bob's Burgers. As I make this list, I think I just like weird couples. These two really seem to have each other's backs and work shoulder to shoulder with each other every day. They really seem to love each other. They're weird. They will also go to the mat for each other in the silliest ways. When they're stumped by their kids, I love them even more. Thank you for listening to Lists and Other Things That No One Asked For. I post a new episode every Monday. If you prefer reading, this is also available as a Substack. You can find me on social media at Jesse Barbin. See you next week.